I didn't think that I'd be talking about the PlayStation Store anytime soon. However, the recent story about the PlayStation Store and Discovery video content being taken away from users' accounts is an example of something I was talking about months ago in my video about video game preservation. In particular, I had discussed in that video how these big corporations are greedy for control in order to make as much money as possible by reselling things to you, whether it be games, movies, or anything else digital. So for those of you that don't know by now, PlayStation Store customers that had purchased shows created by the Discovery Channel will have these purchases removed from their libraries in the very near future. The actual content in question was pulled because Sony didn't want to pay the licensing fees to carry the content on a PlayStation Store. That's what Sony's official statement implied, at least. And that part's understandable. They already stopped selling TV shows and movies a couple of years ago. The problem at this point is that customers are soon no longer going to be able to access these shows that they already paid for on the PlayStation Store without even an offer for a refund at this point. So that content is just going to vanish from accounts by the end of the year. Money gone down the drain. If it's not theft, it's definitely close to it. A lot of people were quick to point out that the real problem here is Warner Bros. Discovery, the owner of the Discovery Channel content getting pulled. Now yes, they deserve to be called out for sticking it to consumers, no doubt about that. For anyone who doesn't know, Warner Bros. Discovery has their own streaming service called Max, formerly known as HBO Max. They're one of the biggest streaming companies around nowadays, with content from many different TV stations like HBO, TNT, TBS, as well as movies produced by Warner Bros., just to name a few things that they own. There's more than that. Also, since the Discovery Channel has several different channels under its umbrella, like the Food Network, TLC, etc., and is now part of this giant media conglomerate, Discovery Plus content is also available on Max. However, Discovery Plus was around even before the current iteration of Max was a thing. Now we have to keep in mind that movie and TV companies, whether they are film studios or even streaming sites like this, they're even more anti-consumer than any company in video games. They lobbied hard enough a long time ago to the US government to make it illegal for people in America to rip their own legally acquired DVDs. Which means it's a crime to make backups of your favorite movies and TV shows that you purchased back in the day. And they love streaming services because they don't have to give you a thing to begin with. So when Sony decided, we're not going to keep selling these shows anymore because we don't want to pay the licensing fees, Warner Bros. Discovery was more than happy to tell Sony to yank that content away from customers. The truth is, they prefer you to subscribe to Max or Discovery Plus so that you can keep paying them each month, over and over again, no matter how much or how little you watch, while they eventually increase their prices. And all of these services increase their prices over time no matter who it is. Netflix is notorious for this, but they are far from the only culprits. Plus, when you have to subscribe to a bunch of different streaming services to replace a lot of what you used to watch on cable, you eventually end up closer and closer to paying what you used to pay for cable to watch TV. And then you still have to pay for internet at home. Personally, I don't subscribe to any of these services myself, but I know for a lot of people, they're a way of life, especially for those who have given up on traditional cable but still love to watch the latest shows and movies. The funny thing is, if you're in the US like I am, you have less rights as a user on a streaming service than with cable. Because at least with cable, it's legal to record TV shows off of it with your DVR or VCR if you still have one. You can't legally record something you're streaming off of Netflix, for example, to watch it offline later. You don't own it technically either. Go read the end user license agreement on just one of these sites if you don't believe me. Now, whether every single detail in that agreement would hold up in a court of law or not, I don't know. And I think these big corporations realize that as well. However, as a deterrent, they are still willing to put the most absurd anti-consumer stipulations in there, hoping no one would notice. Now, with all of that being said about Warner Bros. Discovery, I don't think it's necessarily fair to let Sony and the PlayStation Store off the hook here either. The truth is, they don't care about you either. They don't want to give you that refund because that's money coming out of their pocket. Remember, somebody at Sony had to negotiate this deal with Discovery that would lead to consumers getting content removed from their own libraries without a refund in the worst case scenario. Did anyone from Sony negotiating that deal stop and think how that would affect consumers who would purchase this content only to get it pulled later? Of course not. Believe it or not, Sony isn't that much different from other companies. They don't want you to own anything off of the PlayStation Store. Same with Microsoft or Nintendo with their digital storefronts. All of these companies would love to get to the point where streaming is the only way to play new video games, because they can protect their intellectual properties like the movie industry protects their works, and continue to milk you over and over again for games that you used to own. Plus, there's nothing stopping something like the PlayStation Warner Bros. Discovery fiasco from happening to video games, outside of maybe some bad PR. To be fair, I don't think this is a big concern for original intellectual properties like Nintendo's franchises, for example. However, I'm thinking more about games that are based on licensed IPs or incorporate famous brands, like a sports game or a racing game with licensed cars. Games like these have been pulled from stores in the past, like the older Project Cars games, for example. But in those cases so far, at least you got to keep the game in your Steam library, for example. However, there could be a day where not only can you not buy the game any longer, you won't be able to re-download it either. I could definitely see this with sports games in the future, like the Madden series. Imagine if the NFL and EA renew their exclusivity deal to keep making Madden games, but there's a clause which states that the previous game must be pulled entirely from digital storefronts once the latest game is out, and they also pull it from your account. Now, to some people, this might not sound like a big deal, but what if the latest Madden game, for example, is buggy or worse than the previous year's game? Well, in this situation, you wouldn't get a choice anymore once the new one is out. This could be a huge threat to video game preservation, and honestly, would just encourage more people to take matters into their own hands in order to be able to keep playing the games they want to play. Gamers should be able to decide whether they want to play games they already purchased, whether they are old or not. Once it's in your library, you should be able to access it as long as the store itself hasn't shut down and your game is still on your system. What we really need is for countries like the United States to create a digital bill of rights in order to protect consumers and limit major corporations from infringing on what paying customers can do with the digital media they purchase and download onto their own devices in their own home. It should also protect consumers from having purchased items removed from their online libraries without a refund. It should prevent companies from going after customers for backing up legally acquired games or other software. It should also force digital storefronts to be more clear about their terms of service, to where they can't say buying a game from them, for example, is just buying a lease or rental. If it's really a rental, there should be a specific time period that the rental should last for, and the store should have to tell you in no uncertain terms on each game's listings. Same for any other form of digital media, not just games. However, companies would lobby so hard against this because the last thing they want is to get exposed for who they really are. That's why, unfortunately, I wouldn't expect a digital bill of rights to happen anytime soon, considering that something as common sense as right to repair hasn't become a thing everywhere either. I think the lobbyists would try to kill it, and kill it fast. Despite my cynicism, I'm not going to stop talking about stories like these because consumers are getting screwed over here. Something has to change, and it starts with people becoming aware of how few rights they have in this digital landscape. But anyways, what do you think of this situation? Are you concerned about a future where you don't own any of the entertainment that you enjoy, unlike with physical media in the past? Are you worried about it getting even worse than it already is, like I am? Are you one of the PlayStation Store's customers affected by the Discovery announcement? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe for more content like this, as well as playthroughs of classic games done with no continues or cheats. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.